Welcome back, guys. It's craft time. In today's video, we are going to be working together to use drywall spackle that I got from the Dollar Tree to create a textured painting. I have never used this technique before, so I'm going to take you along on my ride and see if I can walk you through and teach you guys how to use it as well. Let's go ahead and get started. Now let me go ahead and begin by saying that this picture was inspired by a dear friend of mine. We were inseparable when we were little. I ended up changing schools, so naturally we kind of drifted apart. But we do chat and keep up every now and then and keep up with each other's lives through social media like so many of us do. But she's just been on my mind lately. I don't think there's any of us who haven't had some type of loss in our life, or a loved one, a dear friend, that doesn't cause us some grief. And she has had more of this than anyone I know, and she is so strong and so beautiful, and she has been on my mind, and this picture was inspired for her. And so I just wanted to create this picture for her and just let her know that she's not alone and that all of those people are still there for her. And hopefully I can walk you guys through on how I made this, because art is such a great therapy, and if you know grief, then you know that it can hit you at any time and you can't stop it. But if I can teach you guys how to do this and just let art kind of relax you and give you some kind of peace of mind, even if just for that moment, but also leave you with a beautiful gift for yourself or for someone else, just that you can reflect on and make you think of those loved ones that you're missing, then I am so happy to provide that for you guys. So let me just start with, I used a canvas for this. This one is a 20 by 16, and I wanted to just make it a pretty sunset background. So to do this, I got my apple barrel paints. You can get them from Walmart. They're cheap, easy to use. Just grab a couple colors, whatever ones that you want. I believe it's 50 cents a bottle. So that's what I'm using for my background here. To make an easy, simple sunset, all you need to do is just kind of spread your paint around on the canvas. So I use some yellows, orange, light pink, blues, kind of more pastel-y colors, and I just kind of squirted them out on the canvas in a different sections and areas. And then I'm going to take my big brush that I have. This is actually just a cheap e.l.f. makeup brush, and I'm going to use that to spread my paint around. The bigger the brush you have, the easier this will be for you. So before I begin spreading this, I do wet my bristles a little bit and then wring them out. This will just help the paint from soaking up into the bristles and also make the paintbrush glide across the canvas a little easier. So all you're going to want to do is start up in your top left-hand corner and move all the way to the right side completely off the canvas, and then start off the canvas and move it back to the left side completely off the canvas again. This is going to give you nice, clean, horizontal lines without any messed up brush strokes, and you're going to do that all the way down until you get to the bottom. Now, my suggestion is, and this is what I did, I then flipped my canvas around and started from the top left corner again, and I went over it again. This is just going to blend those colors a little bit better, make it a little less streaky and a little more natural. I always like to paint the edges of my canvas. It just kind of gives it a nice wrapped look. That way, if you're looking at it from an angle on the wall, everything looks nice and professional and clean. So all you need to do is kind of, for the bottom and the top, just go straight across. And then for the sides, if you want to make it look cohesive with your picture, just kind of like brush with your lines going the same way as if they just wrapped around the canvas. Just be careful that you don't get anything on the face of the picture. If you do get any weird brush marks that you can see, again, just take it from off the canvas all the way across, off the canvas again, and that should get rid of all of those brush strokes. All right, so now let's move on. This next step is optional, because I've never done this before and because I like things to be symmetrical to a certain extent. I'm not worried about this one being perfectly matched side by side, because I am making angel wings, and I feel like just like a good set of eyebrows, they're sisters, not twins. So that's kind of the vibe I'm going for on here. I want to make them obviously match, be a matching set, but it's okay that they're not exactly the same. So this step, you can either draw directly on your canvas, or what I did is I just took a large piece of paper. If you're using a smaller canvas, you can easily print off an angel wing as your inspiration and use that to trace down onto your canvas. Because my canvas was bigger, I didn't want to print multiple pages to get the side I want, so all I did was just look at a piece online and just really roughly sketch that onto my picture, onto my paper, and then turns out I made it too big, so I had to cut it down a little bit, and then I used my carbon paper to just transfer part of that onto there so that I can find my center good and kind of have a guideline to go. I'm not worried about it, you know, kind of catching on this paint a little bit or leaving any of the carbon paper behind, because all of this will be covered by the end. So if you've never used carbon paper before, you can get it at like an Office Depot or something. It'll be over near the calculators, and all you do is take the black side, put it down on the surface that you're doing, set whatever picture you're tracing or wording you're tracing on top, and trace it with a pencil. That should transfer that image onto whatever you're using and make it easier to have a guideline. Now, the next thing that I did after I traced my wings and kind of got them down and centered and kind of an idea of what I want them to be, I took some gold. I have like this bronzy gold and then a brighter gold of metallic paints, and you can use any of them. You know, it doesn't have to be a certain color, it's whatever you want. Remember, this picture is so meaningful, and if you're doing this, I assume it has some good meaning to you as well. So follow your heart and do what feels good, okay? So just know that it doesn't have to look like mine. Just follow whatever is inspiring you. So I wanted to do the bronzy color, and I just kind of used a rough brush. You can get like these chip brushes, or you can get a stencil brush and just use it. You dip it into, it's like a dry brush technique. If you watch my videos, you know how to do this by now. But you dip it into the paint, you dab off any excess paint, and then you just really lightly with the tips of the bristles leave some streaks on your picture wherever you want them to be. Now, I kind of try to explain this to people as if when you're sweeping the floor, if you take the broom and you push it all the way onto the floor and you flatten those bristles out, you're not going to do anything with that. But if you do it really lightly with the tip of the broom, then it's going to sweep all that dust up. That's the same concept when you're doing a dry brush or when you're painting and need a light stroke. You're just using the tip to create those strokes and those textures. So this is going to leave me kind of some like lines, and I'm going for like a light beam going on. So I did that with my bronzy gold, and then I did it with my bright gold, kind of overlapping a little bit. And I'm doing this because whenever I actually get to spackling and putting my wings down, I want it to look like they're illuminated from the back. So after that step was done, I had planned on using some spackling that I had here at home. I opened the container and it was dried out, and it was way too dry to save. It was ruined. So I thought maybe instead of driving to the store and wasting time, I would just create my own textured paint that I've been using for a lot of other projects and just see if I can make it work. So I did this by mixing together some chalk paint and some baking soda, and I started the project like that. As I got going, when I first put it down, it looked great, but then within seconds it kind of just melted away into a puddle. Not at all what I'm going for. I tried to add even more baking soda. It was a miss. So I went ahead and did the entire thing. It did not look good. It all just melted together. I was not happy with it. It's not what I envisioned. I wanted those stiff textured peaks. I was not getting those at all. So I scraped the canvas. Now I did this very carefully, and I want to include this in there because I want you to know that if something doesn't go the way that you want it to, or it doesn't end up how you envisioned and you're not happy with it, you don't have to settle for that. So I carefully, with trying not to spread it super all over, scraped my canvas. And I also saved all of that paint, and I'm planning on using it for a different project because that was a lot of paint. So I scraped it really carefully off of my canvas, put it back in a container that I can reuse that for later, and I went ahead and headed to Dollar Tree, which I should have done to begin with, and picked up a couple containers of their spackling. Now, I decided that I wanted to add some white paint to this because their spackling, it's supposed to be a really lightweight, but it is a little drier than what I would like. So I added some white paint to the spackling. Now, if you don't want white wings, add a different color paint, tint it, make it fun, make it beautiful, make it whatever, again, whatever you feel, whatever is going to give your heart a little piece, do that. Do it, try it out, and just see what happens. And if you don't like it, scrape it off and start over. That's okay. We all make mistakes. We all can see something here and not always transfer it down to what we're working on, and that is okay. So I just added some white paint. I mixed it in. I wanted it to be a little brighter, whiter than that like slightly grayish color or off-white color that the spackling is on its own. And then I wanted to add a little pizzazz and some glitter. It didn't really show through here, so I just ended up adding that at the end. So I just mixed that up really well. The best way I can explain to the texture that I was looking for was like a thick frosting. So I'm going to take that and then just use whatever you have. So I happen to have these like white spatulas that came with some of my resin projects. So I have this, I have, so the one side is a little bigger. I know I showed it in the video, but let me just pull these up here. So this isn't the one I use, this has paint on it, but this has a little bigger side and it has that really good shape so that when you push down and pull, it's gonna leave a good texture. And then the other side is a little bit thinner. So I knew I could use that for my next size down on my feathers. If you're using something that has a hole, I just taped over the hole, that way it didn't leave any weird textures, and that worked really well. I just used masking tape. And then I needed a next size down from this. I thought I had a popsicle stick. I couldn't find them anywhere. So I have this file that I use for my resin projects and then anything else that I might need to sand down with like a finer grit. And I just pulled the like gritty part off of here and pulled the foam off and used this little plastic piece to do the next size down feather. And then for my very small, like last in line, I did a small popsicle stick that I have on hand. If you don't have that, just find whatever you have. Like if you have something flat, that would work. If you have a piece of cardboard laying around, just cut down some different shapes. You could even use like your fingers, your thumb, you know, next size down, pinky. Just use what you have, make it work. It'll, you know, those different textures and stuff will look good. So it'll work out. I did at one point think about using the pointy one here to like give them a more of like a really pointy feather, and it just wasn't, it was like slipping off of here, or I don't know, I just didn't like what was happening, so I went back to my rounded tips and it worked really well. So for this step, what you want to do, I did end up using 2 cans of the spackle from Dollar Tree, so $2 of spackle, that's what I used. If I were you, I'd pick up a third one if you're doing the same size as me, a third one just to have on hand, because it does depend on how heavy-handed you are with it. I went pretty heavy and was okay, but I did like use all of it from the 2 cans. So you want to, after you get it mixed up, you want to put a glob of it on the end of whatever utensil you're using. Go up to the top, so you want to start on the tips of the wings and move down to the center. That way they're layered with the feathers, you know, your faux feathers in the back, moving forward to give it a good texture and look. So you start at the back, you just push it down, and then you slowly push a little harder and wipe it until it's clean. And that's going to leave a good mound at the top with that rounded texture, and then just pull it down. And you can fiddle with it a little bit, just be careful. It is gonna, you know, crumble and break away a little bit, and it's gonna be hard to fight perfection. You want it to be rough and you want it to have that texture so that when it dries, it kind of pops out at you. You don't want it all smooth. And I know that goes again, you know, I was fighting myself a little bit to just leave it clumpy in certain areas and stuff. So just, you know, it's gonna dry, it's gonna be beautiful, so don't fight it too much. So you just do that all the way around. You move down to your next size and you just kind of do where it looks good. Now, if you did a little template like I did, you kind of have an idea, but then, you know, I scraped my whole canvas and I couldn't see it anymore, so I just went with what looked visually good to my eye. You don't want them all to be like lined straight up, so like here's one, here's another one. You don't want straight lines like that, so just be a little cautious of that. It's okay if some of them are like that, but then make sure that one's kind of like offset from that. That way they aren't just like straight lines. If you look at like a bird's wings, they're not all going to be just straight and perfect like that. So those are my tips for you. So I just did that. I just took my time all the way down. I did one wing at a time. That way the stuff does dry kind of quickly, and you don't want to be doing the outside of one, move to the other one, and by the time you come back over here, when you go to do your next layer, you're messing up that outside one because it's too dry. So do one wing at a time so that you can do your biggest, your medium, your next in line, and then your smallest ones, all while it's still wet so that you can maneuver it however you need to. And then while it's still wet, that's when I did sprinkle some glitter on top just to give it that little pop and flare. And then you will need to seal that in with something. I used my Rust-Oleum clear matte and just gave it a good spray, and I did from the entire canvas just for good measure. And that's what's going to keep that glitter in there and not just like blowing off and like making a mess everywhere. So I'm really happy with how this turned out. I didn't like the center at first, so if you can see in my wings, I have it to where it kind of makes a heart shape. I didn't like the way that looked at the end, so I did just go ahead and paint a heart, a solid heart in the middle, and just leave it at that. But I think it turned out beautiful, and again, I think it has some really good meaning to it. I do plan on doing a couple more of these because this inspired me to a whole nother level of things that I want to do. I have this piece of wood that I cleaned up and did a lot of work on and stained it up, and it's beautiful, but it's kind of rough, and I've been looking for a project to do, and I think I'm going to do this technique onto it because I think it would look beautiful. So I might do that in a short so that you guys can kind of see what it would look like with a different background. I'm going to have a couple other ones rattling up around in my head. So yeah, keep a lookout for those. If you guys try this, please let me know. Let me know in the comments, you know, how you feel about this. What would you do differently? Yeah. If you're new here, I really appreciate you sticking around and watching and learning, and I hope you plan on staying. Hit the like button and subscribe to my channel so you can go with us on our crafting journey. We do a little bit of everything on this channel. If you're returning, you already know I love and appreciate you. I am so glad you're here. Yeah, I'm just going to take you guys in for a closer look, and I will see you next time.